How's it going, Front Runner family? Welcome. We're doing another one of our Zoom series interviews over the last few weeks. We've spoken to players, to coaches, to administrators, and today we're speaking to someone who's involved in the business of football. If you joined us at our football forum, you may have heard him already. It's kabelo Bosilong, who joins me from Sports Sense. He's their MD. Welcome to the show, kabelo. Maybe we can start as to your exposure and where this journey in football business all began.
Thank you very much, Gamza, for having me. Just a brief about myself. I was basically started Sports Sense in 2012 after working at the PSL and for a sports marketing agency for a year. Decided that I wanted to start my own company where I could basically work on the kind of projects I want to work in football. Sometimes when you obviously work with an organization, you're very limited or restricted in terms of what you can do. So I kind of wanted to be free in terms of the work that I wanted to do within the football space and kind of change the way football, the narrative of football is being obviously done within the country, within the continent. And luckily enough, we've been blessed to have worked on, kind of big projects. We've worked with FIFA, consulting for them, with CAF as well. I've been involved as a general coordinator doing, your inter-club matches from your Confederations Cup, Champions League games, your national team tournaments. I'm also a club licensing instructor and a stadium inspector for CAF as well. So we go around the continent trying to improve football on a holistic level. And locally, we've been involved with the Net Banking on a Team Search since its inception, where we got to do some cool things around football development in that regard, and host a few pre-season tournaments every year. So we're very much involved within the football space locally and on the continent. But a lot of work still needs to be done, as you know, in general. On the African continent, we still have long ways to go, and I think it's all due to a lot of factors. But I think if all of us work together, pull in the same direction, we can obviously easily achieve those goals.
Yeah, no, pulling in the same direction seems to be the biggest challenge of all, with so many interests at stake. But today we're going to kind of lift the lid on something that we've discussed before at the Footballing Forum, this club licensing concept, something you kind of, opened up for us at that discussion. And we've been referring to it ever since. Essentially, in a nutshell, it's not going to be a very small nut. It's going to be a big nut. But what is club licensing if we had to just kind of reduce it to a statement?
I think club licensing is a system that is, supposed to improve the professionalism of football in that certain country, region, whether it be at the member association or league level with the club. So I think it's a system where we at least want clubs to be at a certain level to be able to play or participate within a league in that country. And it's just a way to regulate and check that all the member clubs are at a certain level in order for us to make sure that the collective is improving at the same rate, rather than one or two clubs being at that level and the majority of the clubs at another level.
Right. So it's essentially like a base level for which all clubs should operate at. If we look at its genesis, I mean, it started as something, as a reaction from the Germans, as far as, them having to develop and redevelop their football. If you can take us back to kind of its origins and how it's evolved since then, because it started with simple tenets like inclusion, as far as playing personnel are concerned. But as you've just rightly said, now it goes now to include the entire league and club structure.
Yeah, I think with regards to its origins, I don't think it was originally intended to become a club licensing system. As with anything, it was intended to solve a problem.
Right.
And I think the problem that the Germans had at the time was that, number one, they did not qualify out of the group stages of the Euro. And for German football, that is almost like blasphemy.
Right.
The Germans either get to the semifinals or the finals. If you don't reach those levels, even the semifinals is considered a disaster. So to not
Right.
get out of the group stages is something that is catastrophic, and that shows you the level of commitment that and passion that the Germans take their football. Whereas other countries, you're just happy to even get there. The Germans are not happy to even get out of the group stages.
Right.
So I think that event became a cataclysmic event in German football, where
Right.
I think they then had to look at themselves internally and see that, okay, the kind of football we're playing is not the type of football we're being left behind.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think if you look at the German national team in 2000 as opposed to the German national team of now, you saw there's a big difference in terms of the playing personnel. I mean, it was mainly your typical white German player. Right now, you have a plethora of players from different ethnicities who
right.
were born in Germany. And I think
Yeah.
they've used that cultural diversity to enhance their football. And it all started with this kind of system where I think after that event in 2000,
Mm,
they decided that clubs in Germany must now invest a percentage of all their money that they make
mm,
from football in youth development. And
mm,
obviously, if you're now mandated to invest in youth development, that means that you are now looking out for talent uh, in your area.
sure.
And now you're now forced to do it, not like you weren't doing it before. Now you're forced to actively look for talent in your area. And obviously, the types of players that came up from that, your Mesut
Yeah.
Ozils, your
Yeah.
Lucas Podolskis, that are your non-typical German players.
Right.
And that's the one thing, is that obviously talent speaks for itself. If a player is better than another player, whether his skin color, whether his
Yeah.
ethnicity, if you want better football, which is another thing that I also don't understand, how we as South Africa have not gone that similar route, because we
Right.
have many almost like different ethnicities within
Yes.
South Africa. We have Nigerian South Africans, we have Zimbabwean South Africans, Zambian South Africans, and we have not utilized that kind of thinking to say, let's be inclusive in terms of the type of playing personnel that we require for our football. And I think
Mm,
we've been almost excluding those, and we can obviously include terms of xenophobia into the mix.
right.
But we have almost, in a way, if we hadn't been kind of excluding them, we would definitely have players of Nigerian ethnicity or Zambian ethnicity or Zimbabwean ethnicity playing for our national teams. But at
Right.
the end of the day, obviously, then they look and say, we're not wanted in South Africa, so they go back to play for
Their
their home
national team.
countries.
Yeah.
So we are the only losers out of this. We develop those players within our structures, but then
Hmm.
they go back and play for their fatherland or their
Right.
motherland, because we are kind of, I'm not going to say actively excluding them, but in a
Right.
way we are excluding them because they're not in the system, that they're
We're
not
not
there,
actively including them.
including them,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the that was the genesis of the birth of club licensing from the German model.
Mm,
And then UEFA obviously started looking at it and then developed it into an active kind of system where they started including other pillars outside of football in terms of training youth, and they started including administration, infrastructure criteria, legal, finance,
mm,
and that's kind of where it took off. And I think that's when you saw the explosion of kind of even the Champions League was there, but I think
mm,
because of club licensing, it took it to another level, because now six systems and structures were in place where now you could look at a Champions League match. It
mm,
doesn't even matter what stadium it is, but you know
mm.
it's a Champions League match because
Right.
of the production, because of the infrastructure that is there. So it's at a high quality level, and because of a system like club licensing, which has helped then commercialize, which has helped then its competitions commercialize
Yeah.
to the extent that it is at the moment.
Okay, let's look at how it benefits the clubs. I mean, the big clubs that are run like multinational corporations obviously will hit a lot of the marks a lot easier than the smaller clubs. What's in it for the smaller clubs? If I'm a smaller club looking at club licensing, how does it stand to benefit me if I comply? What are some of the positive spin-offs that sometimes aren't obviously evident and maybe aren't looked at? Development is an easy one. You see the fruit in a couple of years
Yes.
time, but the other ones, what are the benefits to complying?
I think number one, obviously, like you'd mentioned,
Mm.
the clear and obvious one is football development. So you
Yeah,
develop your own players. Obviously, then
spend
you can
less,
get you can spend less on
big
on players,
transfers.
number one,
Yeah,
and then you can get a lot more money on transfers. So for the smaller clubs, it's more beneficial because of that fact.
right.
I think the second other point is you look at your infrastructure.
Mm,
Now, obviously, it's difficult in other aspects because most, depending on which region you're in, most clubs on the continent do not
yeah,
own their own facilities. So it's
right.
very difficult to say you must do this one, two, three, four in terms of your stadia, but you don't own that stadia.
Yeah.
Where it has helped clubs in Europe, let's say, where
Mm,
teams do own their own facilities, is that they've been able to commercialize those venues.
okay.
They've been able to use them not only for football but for
Yeah.
other related activities. I mean, clubs turn their stadiums into hotels midweek, and
Mm,
in the suites, uh, it turns into bedrooms, and then you use conferencing, you use them for many other activities. So that's revenue generation.
yeah.
Um, from an administration point of view, when you start getting quality people working for your club, that's when you start seeing the benefit. A lot
Sure.
of the time, clubs will hire people because I know you, Gamza, you're my friend,
Mm,
you're going to be my chief marketing officer.
right.
You have not spent a day studying marketing. You don't even know marketing, but because you're my friend, I put you in that position.
Yeah.
You are now the guy who's supposed to go get me money for the club, but you don't even know how to talk to corporates.
Huh.
So now it makes sure that people who are in that job are people who are qualified and people who can then add value to your club. So it goes all around, even from a financial and legal point of view. The benefits are clearly there if you do things in the correct manner, but
Mm,
obviously it takes everyone to do it in a certain way. It doesn't help that if one or two clubs do it and then the rest don't do it. And it's usually the clubs who see the value are the bigger clubs. The smaller
mm,
clubs will always, and I mean, every time I go across to countries around the continent,
mm,
they always complain. The first thing they'll complain about is, we have no money. And I'm like, okay, let's put it into perspective. If
mm,
I gave you 10 million US dollars right now,
yeah.
what would you spend that money on as a club?
Right.
And now you see their brains rattling. It's like, and the first thing they'd obviously spend the money on is players,
Yes.
acquiring, buying players. And it just shows you that there's no planning, there's no
Mm,
budgets, there's
mm,
no one gives me an answer of, of that 10 million, 20% I'll spend on
yes.
my current playing squad,
Mm,
30% I'll spend on marketing opportunities, 40% I'll spend on infrastructure. There's no proper planning like that because almost in a way, clubs live hand to mouth.
yeah.
Um, they almost live like you can't have a 5-year strategy. And a lot of clubs have said that is that how can you have a 5-year strategy when I don't even know if I'll be in this league in 5 years? I'm
Mm,
playing for the now.
mm,
So I have to focus on the now, which is understandable
right.
as a business. But I think then we also need to then put systems in place where clubs don't have to always feel that burden. Because imagine every single year, clubs are are actually saying, "I'm living hand to mouth every year." Then
Yeah.
what's the benefit of being a football club owner in this country, in this continent, if you always have to worry that I have to focus for the now? You can't even plan for the future. That means
Right.
that you can't even become a profitable business in a way.
Yes.
And I think many clubs are not profitable businesses, and that is clear to see. So it's very difficult environment, and I think that's where relationship and stakeholders need to come together and say, guys, how can we take decisions to make sure that the future of football is sustainable? And when you
Yes.
look at the South African context, You look at club owners where, right now the hot topic is the sale of Bloom Celtic. You
Yes.
know, clubs moving, being sold, and it's understandable that obviously it's a business. Football
Yes.
is a business.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you also want to protect the integrity of the business.
Yeah.
Um, where you don't want to now say, um, you know, if I win the lottery tomorrow,
Yeah.
280 million, I can basically go straight to the PSL. I've never owned a club. I can basically go buy a franchise in the PSL and become a club owner.
Mm,
And
mm,
clubs that have worked hard to be in that situation, you have supporters who have well invested. They invest their hearts, their
the
souls into
time.
football club, and
Yeah.
their time and their effort. And then you get a sense of, okay, now I see why people support Chiefs and Pirates, because I
Mm,
know they're going to be around for the next 10 years. This
right.
club, I don't know. It's from my city. It's from my, I'm supposed to be aligned with it, but I
Hmm.
don't know if it's going to be around for the next 5 years. So why should I invest my heart and soul into it? So it gets into a whole lot of other things. And that's why you don't see then, you have those spin-offs where you don't see a lot of people at stadiums, because
Yeah.
most of them live in that area. But it's like, I'm a Chiefs fan because I know Chiefs is going to be around for the next 10 years. I'll only go when Chiefs is playing, or
Right.
I'll watch it at be when Chiefs is playing, but I'm not going to invest my heart and soul into this club, because at the end of the day, I see the situation. If they can do it
Mm,
to Bloom Celtic fans,
mm,
who are we?
mm,
So those are the
mm.
kind of situations that are coming up where we kind of have to have an honest discussion about football and football ownership and football sustainability as a business in the long term.
You get a sense that because of certain clubs who play football in continental competitions on the rest of the continent, they kind of had to get up to speed via CAF, requiring club licensing to be implemented for those teams, and then there was a push to have it implemented locally. How far along are we at convincingly implementing on the continent and then back here at home in South Africa?
Um, I think with the situation in South Africa, we were very fortunate. I'd
Mm,
like to say, that we hosted the World Cup.
yeah.
When I was at the PSL, one of my main mandates was to come up with the compliance manual,
Mm,
and I think the compliance manual is is basically what we wanted was to basically implement the club licensing system in 2007 at the PSL.
yeah.
But almost a club licensing system at that time was almost like
Unheard
Starship
of.
Enterprise. It was
Yeah.
too far. So we needed to break it down and come back to reality. So we started creating a set of manuals that clubs needed to adhere by. Whereas we took a different route, but we're trying to achieve the same objective
Yeah.
in terms of clubs then understanding the compliance issue.
With a piecemeal
If you don't
approach.
do
Yeah.
Exactly. If you don't do this, then you're going to get, punished by that. This is what you need to do because you're getting grants from the league.
Mm,
This is one of your obligations. And,
right.
one of the key assets we had was contracts. So contractual obligations with your broadcaster, you need to put your head coach
Yeah.
in a pre-match interview and a post-match interview. If you don't,
Right.
then you're going to get fined.
Right.
Some clubs are like, oh, whatever. And at the beginning, they'd send their assistant coaches. But then when they started getting fined, then they started to realize, oh, no, okay, this is affecting our pockets. So we need
Yes.
to actually send the head coach. And it took a while of understanding, but now it's at a level where we are very much compliant. And I think from a club licensing point of view, we 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 hit in terms of CAF regulations.
Hmm.
We basically we match what needs to be done from a club licensing point of view. But the club licensing system is something that it's not. You can use it how you want it. So
Okay.
let's say, for example, you set the bar here. This is CAF's bar. You
Yeah.
can set your own bar up here, and
Right.
I think that's what we haven't done. Is now we haven't set the bar high
Higher.
enough, because
Yeah.
and I think we can push ourselves even more, because we can still work within the same framework regulation, but include more challenging regulations to
Yes.
make sure that clubs adhere and make sure that clubs push to improve professionalism. Because if we stay to the same set of regulations, let's say that a CAF, and you must remember that the CAF regulations
Yeah.
are regulations that obviously have to adhere to 53 different federations. And those 53 different federations are all on different levels. So CAF cannot come up with hardcore regulations in as a blanket, because
Sure.
then most of the countries would not adhere to those. So I think the onus is on especially South Africa, because we had already taken the lead in terms of having a compliance system
Yeah.
within the league already. Then to advance that, to show that, okay, then we can actually take this further. And I think in terms of the areas that we're very much lacking in is obviously from a transfer, from a player development point of view. Obviously, the multi-choice disc has helped in essence, but I think more can be done from
Yeah.
a player development point of view. A lot more can be done, because I also think that personally, a lot of laws or regulations are inhibiting us, or are keeping us back, where you have the foreigners, you have 5 foreigners per club, but then I think that rule should be changed to not 5 foreigners, but it should be 5 players who are eligible to play for the national team. Because now you have foreigners who are in certain teams. They count as locals, but they can't play for Bafana Bafana. So a team like Sundowns could field 11 foreigners in their starting 11, and none of them are eligible to play for the national team. And you have one of the biggest clubs in the country who can field a starting 11 purely based on foreigners. And that's
Right.
where you need to have rules protecting our own interests. And I'm not saying it's xenophobic, but you also need to start protecting your own interests. For an example, in Egypt, no clubs are allowed to sign foreign goalkeepers. So all foreign goalkeepers are Egyptian. That's standard.
Yeah.
So that already is telling you that they're protecting, because of the position.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for you as a goalkeeper to get playing time. So we'd rather make sure that that position is protected, and make
Right.
sure that Egyptians are the ones who are getting playing time in Egypt, and we're not bringing in foreign goalkeepers.
Huh.
So those kind of things assist in the long run, of helping players develop, players get opportunities to play, and hence in a way, you don't see many 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds breaking through in the PSL,
Yeah.
because our league is not, because of the previous statement of where it's almost hand to mouth. I need to survive now. You'd rather go for experience.
For
But if
sure.
there's a long-term strategy, and almost clubs can know that we can start planning longer, that's when you can start blooding in younger players. And I
Right.
think we need young players, because those young players are, number one, they're the future of the country, and
Yeah.
they need to start developing earlier. The earlier they start developing and playing in matches,
Competitive matches. Yeah.
competitive matches, that's when you build your national team. And I mean, we've had a good base where we've had teams qualify for the under 17, under 20 World Cups. But if you look at those teams, how many of those players are playing consistently for their clubs
Sure.
at the moment?
Sure.
And at the top level, not NFD, let's say your Premier League. You can only count few of them, your Tebogo Mokoena, maybe.
Right.
But it's a very few of them who went to those competitions. And now, if you're not playing regularly in the PSL, you're not going to play for the national team.
Of course.
And now all that experience that they've gained from playing in international tournaments, which you could use at an international level, has gone down the drain, because
Right.
we've prepared youngsters in international tournaments. They know how to play, because international tournaments, there's a different way of playing a tournament than it is to playing a league.
Sure.
You need a different kind of mindset. You need a different kind of personnel, players who know that in this match we need 3 points, or this match
Sure.
we need a draw,
Sure.
and we need to grind out a draw, or we need to play a certain way.
Yeah.
So you need a different type of mentality in a tournament than in a league. And those kind of players who get it earlier and younger, playing together. And that's how the Germans also did it, because a lot of those players who won the World Cup in 2014, they'd been playing together since they were 10.
Yeah.
The club level, national team level, and the pool base was huge. And these players all started together from a young age. So by the time they get to an international tournament at senior level, it's, they've done this constantly, and it's something that it's like water off the back of the, it's
Yeah.
something that they do. So I think that's where we also need to then fast track the development of youth talent in this country, because we do have talent, but
Right.
when they only starting or debuting at 25, 26,
It's too late.
that's not you. It's too late. Yeah.
No, for sure. So, I mean, it sounds like, at the moment, South Africa is faced where in a situation where the clubs are all kind of like streams running on their own, as opposed to being, tributaries to one pool, so to speak, that kind of goes into the football world with an offering. It seems it's very much every man for himself, and that club licensing would kind of say, hey guys, let's pool our resources. Let's all pull in the same direction as set by these guidelines, then we stand to benefit. If that is the case, and I'm understanding you correctly, what's the trouble with the buy-in? Why have we not had the buy-in from the clubs that, saying that, listen, if I could latch on to the best practice, not just from myself, but from a Kaizer Chiefs and an Orlando Pirates, I will stand to gain in future, and vice versa. There might be something the smaller clubs are doing better than the bigger clubs that they can latch onto. Why is there this keen separation of ideas as opposed to coming together and pulling in the same direction?
I think our biggest challenge in this country,
Mm,
fruitfully speaking, is that the federation and the league are not on the same page.
right.
I think once that can get sorted out, everything will be a little bit easier in terms
Mm,
of when you talk to current coaches or former players, what they'll tell you, what South Africa is missing, a majority of them will say schools football. They'll
mm,
tell you that when they were playing, schools football was huge,
right.
and schools football was a talent factory that you got, that you got players from,
Right.
and you could level. And where's our schools football now? It's
Mm,
nowhere to be seen.
mm,
It's not producing the players. So a lot of the pressure is now put on the clubs. Whereas
yeah.
before, would relieve a lot of that pressure, almost
Right.
like the American system where schools are
Yeah.
the ones producing the talent, and then the professional teams go and draft them
For
and collect
sure.
these players who are now well refined.
Yeah.
Where it was in when Doc used to play in high school against your Jerry's Kosana. So they didn't meet
Mm,
at Chiefs and Pirates. They met at high
mm,
school at
mm,
level. So I think schools football is something that's missing, that definitely can assist in terms of the development, because schools are everywhere. And we
mm.
can't always now point to Chiefs and Pirates and all these PSL clubs to say, why aren't you developing players? Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, they they're also focusing on, making sure that they're competitive
For
in the
sure.
current
They're a
league.
professional
And
entity. They're looking to just kind of absorb, like
exactly,
a corporate company. You go and you find the best to work for you, as opposed to expecting to develop them. You can have that as part of the system, but you do kind of need the market to give you the raw product, but well developed.
exactly. And that's where your LFA clubs as well play a major role. So
Mm,
LFA clubs at junior levels, if the structure and competitions are high level competitions are there, then
mm,
it's easier for clubs to take the best of the best, because the
yeah.
clubs know that you are playing in this league every week. Now it's not forced that clubs are now taking someone who's 12 years old or
Mm,
putting into their system, and then that 12-year-old might not make it because now
right.
he's already in the, and now it would be easier if you're now tracking someone who's playing in a schools league or at an LFA, and you take him at a later time where
Right.
he's more
Having vetted
developed.
them.
So,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think the major challenge is the association and the league. Obviously, if their relationship and they I don't know if what to say, but
Yeah.
I think if they were to work together
Yeah.
on certain things, a lot of the things would be easier uh, for everything else football related in this country.
I mean, you make an interesting point there in terms of those two kind of competing forces. One, obviously, the moneymaker, the other being the authority. And you got competing interests, I guess some would argue that, what the local league is saying, listen, guys, we're in the business of making money. yeah, we'll try and, play our part. We've mentioned stuff like the MDC, where you even had Safa kind of come in and say, hey, man, we're the custodians, and you're right. There's these fights, but at the end of the day, football tends to be the loser. So
Mm.
then who's it incumbent on to kind of smoke the peace pipe? Because I mean, we're seeing it somehow working now with the two coming together to kind of figure out what happens to professional football in the time of Corona and wrapping up the season. But I mean, who essentially can take this whole matter by the scruff of the neck and sort it out?
I mean, you could see even with this coronavirus, there were
Mm,
loggerheads at
mm,
the beginning.
mm,
So the tensions are there, and I think from my personal point of view in general, I think we have over politicized football,
right.
and I think there's a space for politics and there's a space for administration, for the
Yes.
business side of things and running things the way they should be. And
Right.
I think much as they merge together, I mean, you can't separate them.
Yeah.
They definitely, you can't separate football from sports or from so I mean politics from sports.
Yeah.
But at the end they must know it mustn't now take center stage to where
And be at the
now
detriment of the sport. Yeah.
at the detriment of the sport. So obviously, with regards to who should be,
Leading
the
the
main
charge.
chief driver,
Yeah.
from a FIFA point of view, the member association, the federation, should be the the main custodian of football, and
Yeah.
that's why PSL is a special member of SAFA, because
Right.
obviously professional football plays an integral, important role. Now, obviously, the dynamics between the two have not always been eye to eye,
Mm,
but at the end of the day, the only way that football, I think, can progress in this country is if you see them working together. I mean, if you look at a typical example where almost the league
mm,
is very powerful, but the FA is also very powerful, is in England. And I
sure.
think our league was almost, modeled around the English
Mm,
Premier League.
mm,
But they have a working relationship, hand-in-hand relationship. The league is strong, the Football Association is strong. And I mean, if you look at England now,
mm,
they are one of the countries that are actually doing very well with regards to, player development,
mm,
league, attracting the best players to, so their league is on a high, their
mm,
national team's on a high. The young players, they have lots of young players. I mean, they won the under 17 and the under 20 World Cups.
hmm,
A lot of those young players, your Jordan Sancho's, they're playing in
mm,
Germany. A
mm.
lot of them are playing in Germany, whereas before the English mentality was
Stay here.
English can't play in other countries, just
Yeah.
stay here.
Yeah.
The youngsters, now the youngsters were not getting enough game time because a lot of foreign players were coming into
Yes.
the English.
Right.
So now they've said, no, actually foreign players can go out, where countries like Germany are definitely taking a lot of young players, American players, English players, a lot of young
Yeah.
players, and blooding them in their leagues.
Right.
And that's to the benefit of English football. And why can't we do that? Why can't
Mm,
we send the guys that are playing under 17, under 20 that went to, if they're not getting game time in this country, why
mm.
can't they go to Botswana? Why can't they
Right.
go to, Zimbabwe, Zambia?
Right.
Why
Zambia.
can't
Yeah.
I think, the mentality of our players or our country in a way
Mm,
is if you can't make it here, then you can't make it anywhere. And there's
for
many
sure.
opportunities outside. And
Well, you're seeing
to
it with the
me, I
younger
think that
generation, aren't you? The boys that are out in Europe. I'm speaking on Sunday to a player, Kafumpete, who's playing in Portugal. No one knows of the guy, but he kind of took it upon himself to say, "Listen, if I want to develop and be better, I need to get out of here and go somewhere where I can be tested whilst playing regularly."
exactly. And I think the onus is on those players to do a lot more of that, because at the end of the day, I think our mentality is almost like you must play in South Africa for Chiefs and
Mm,
Pirates to be known,
mm,
to play for
mm,
the national team.
mm,
But at the end of the day, you also need to make a living.
of course.
You stay here and nothing happens, or you can go out and try your luck outside. And a lot of younger players are doing that now. And for me, I think also um, it's almost kind of like the legacy of apartheid, where we were
Mm,
told we cannot leave this country, we can't go. And obviously, the younger generation are not. entrapped
Yeah.
by maybe that legacy as much. So
Right.
they're more willing to go. And I think we need to encourage a lot more of that. We need to encourage a lot more coaches to go outside and coach in
Yeah.
different countries.
Yeah.
You go outside, you get in mentality, you get to know how leagues are doing it. How can we have, coaches from other countries coming to this country, but then we can't have coaches going to other countries? It can't
Yeah.
be a one way, you
For
know.
sure.
And I'm not saying that we can't have other foreign coaches, because we're coming in with different, but they must be of a quality standard. We
And
can't just accept
enhancing.
anyone. Enhancing our league, but then
Right.
we can also get our coaches to enhance. And I mean, when you look at Coach Tabo Senong in Lesotho,
Mm,
and I'm sure that he's going to start making a difference in that national team.
mm,
Uh, you think of the TD Lesarame, who's in Botswana.
right.
Botswana football has improved, and I think we can add value to the continent, and we can add a lot of value. But I think guys must now, kind of, get over the fear of the unknown out there
Yeah.
and say, let me go try, let me go and do this, let me break barriers. And a good example is Senzo Mbata, who's in Tanzania.
Mm,
He's showing the light from a football point of view that
exactly.
South African can be of another club in another
Sure.
country,
Sure.
not just to these. So he's opened the door, and I hope more people can follow and say, you know what, let me go try my luck outside. I want to
For
be involved in
sure.
football, and I can add value. And a lot of the time, which is kind of the sense I also get when you talk to other people, is South Africans are very much valued from a
Mm,
football perspective in other countries,
mm,
and we shouldn't shy away from that. People look up to us. People look to us because we are running something that's very good in this country. As much as
right.
we have a lot of challenges,
Mm,
we are the leading light from a football point of view on this continent, no doubt. And a lot of people appreciate that expertise,
yeah.
and we should be afraid to go try our knowledge, try our things outside of this country.
You spoke of before. I want to kind of latch onto it before we leave it behind. But you spoke about the FA and the Premier League kind of having this accord. What do you think is the basis of that? What do you think is the gentleman's agreement that they kind of shook on, that has them kind of living in harmony? Obviously, there's a designation of duty in terms of what you're meant to do and what your KPIs are as a league and as a federation that maybe our local administrators could learn from.
I think with a Premier League and the FA, it's very much the Premier League became this
Mm,
monster that just grew into something that no one had kind of fathomed
mm,
it would turn out. And I mean, at that time when the Premier League was starting, the FA was the main player, and
right.
I think the breakaway happened because um, they saw the business, business at the end of the day, the business side of it won
True.
over and said,
Yeah.
we can commercialize this league. And almost in a sense of what happened in this country as well, where, you had a TV deal that wasn't beneficial to the league,
Mm.
uh, you know, and they kind of said, you know what, we have to look at
Our
commercial
interests.
interests,
Yeah.
and our interests from this is a business at the end of the day,
Right.
and business took over, and that's what happened. So I think both kind of charted similar
Paths. Yeah.
paths,
Yeah.
both went in similar paths, but I think they where it kind of gave way is I think the English FA maybe understood that to the league is the face of football in
Yes.
this country.
Yes.
Yes, the national team only plays 8 games a year, if
Right. Right.
the league is week in week out. So we need to work together.
Mm.
The league are the ones developing the players to play in the national team.
Right.
So can't get away from the fact that the two need to work together at the end of the day. You can't have a separate, you can't have two parallel organizations. No,
Mm.
both need each other, and both need to be strong for the other to succeed.
Mm.
You need a strong SAFA for PSL to excel. You
Mm.
need a strong PSL for SAFA to excel. So
Sure.
at the end of the day, I think for me, from it may be egos, it may be other things. I really don't know, and I don't want to
Mm. Speculate.
say
Yeah.
speculate what it could be. But at the end of the day, what I do know is that if it continues like this, we're not going to progress, and we've seen that from the past few years, where I could always say that every Olympic year we're going to have the same problem, and that
Yeah.
problem is going to be call up of
Releasing
players.
of
You can
players.
always
Yes.
releasing of players. It always happens every single Olympic year.
Yeah.
And if you had collaboration or cooperation, that would be a thing of the past. We would
Mm,
say, how does South Africa go to the qualifiers for the Olympics in
mm,
Egypt with
mm,
13 players at the
mm.
airport?
Right.
Those kind of things. What
Yeah.
does the morale? For us to have qualified for the tournament just shows that these boys, their mental strength was at another level. But when
Exactly.
you leave at airport and you leave with 13 players,
Yeah.
what is going through the player's mind at that time is like,
Right.
geez, are we
We're
going
on
to
our own. Yeah.
with 13 we're on our own,
Yeah.
that kind of, and we shouldn't be putting our players in that kind of predicament. And obviously staff are lauding the exploits of the team, and they should, but at the end of the day we shouldn't laud the way that it was done.
The
That was wrong.
mediocrity. Yeah.
the
That
way
the
the
way
way that
approached
it was
it.
done was wrong,
Yeah.
and we shouldn't now laud that. We should laud them for persevering and qualifying for the Olympics, yes,
Right.
because that was a unanimous feat. But the way they got there, that should not be something we praise, because then we're praising that we can do it all the time and then we can
Yeah.
still qualify. And
Yeah.
still, now we're getting rid from, we're shying away from the actual problem. So I think this issue of the association and the league coming together is vital for our football
Mm.
to get to that next level, because South Africa should be top three in the continent, bar none, at all times. They should be qualifying for every single World Cup. It's getting tougher and tougher, yes, but I think with what we have, we should be constantly one of those guys who are in every single competition
Mm.
that we participate in, that we're trying to qualify for, whether it's women's, youth, senior level. We should be qualifying hands down, and we need to get to that level. And I think the women have shown
Yeah.
that lack of
That
resources
support.
is
Yeah.
not even going to stop them from doing what they need to do, because
Right.
people have not been looking at women's football. People have been shying away from women's football. They've been treated like, I don't even want to say the words, but they've actually been showing that with that, they can
Mm.
actually do the job where
Mm.
they, their male counterparts get given everything, but they
Yeah.
still lack.
So what
So,
more
so
if
I
they got all those resources and the support?
exactly,
Where would they be?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
It's a scary
sometimes
thought.
it's if we really did put and pump everything into women's football, women's football in this country could actually be more formidable than men's football.
Sure.
We could actually be doing much more, and I think some countries have started to realize, what, let's play at what we're good at. There's
Mm.
some countries who are good at futsal. They'll limit the amount of participation, but futsal point of view, they'll
Yeah.
go all out. Some
All in. Yeah.
some countries at women's football,
Yeah.
they'll go all out for women's football, and
Right.
they'll give men's football a break because they know they're not gonna. Let's go into where we know we will succeed, or
Yeah.
we have a better chance of succeeding. So maybe that might be an approach we need to take, or even just to match it 50-50 is
Yeah.
all that we can ask for. Then you can see with the 50% that the women are getting, they might even achieve even more.
Yeah, no, there's throughout you speaking, there's a sense of, stakeholders and those relevant parties being in, but not all in. It's
Mm.
almost kind of like, oh, well, we're doing the little that we can, or we're doing, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, as opposed to just kind of going for it. And it's kind of scary. But then let's maybe look at things through a COVID lens, and maybe we'll speak to now the benefits of having club licensing. I'm sure you've been keeping abreast of what's happening, but I would I would go out on a limb and guess that clubs that kind of follow club licensing as it's meant to are probably better shielded from the fallout of COVID than those who aren't. I mean, I'm sure there'll be studies that come along, but it would just kind of would seem to me that if you had taken all those precautions and kind of gone by the manual, that you'd be a bit better insulated from the lack of income and all the knock-on effects of having a lockdown and confronting COVID brings along with it.
No, definitely. I think you're right in that aspect. I think currently and for future, club licensing is going to play even a bigger role
Right.
with regard football recovering from COVID-19. Like you say, clubs who kind of have been following club licensing um, are definitely going to benefit more than clubs who haven't. And
Mm,
let's look at the transfer market.
mm,
Clubs are not going to have enough money to now buy players at the level they were buying before. The
right.
clubs that were producing their own players are now going to be in the front foot because you're producing your own players. Now you don't have to buy your own players.
Mm,
Now you'll stop blooding your own players. And I
mm.
think it's actually, you know, in a way,
Blessing
I
in
think
disguise.
this crisis has been a blessing in disguise in a
Yeah.
way. As much as obviously we were hoping, I hope that from this,
Mm,
I hope that football can come out of it better. And I
mm,
think even if you look from a government point of view, they've now had to do things that they weren't kind of have done before,
mm.
and hopefully governance of the country is going to come out better because of this pandemic. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that football also is in that same tune as like, you know what, because of COVID-19, we have come out of it in a different way. We can't be running football the same way we've been running it before.
Mm, mm,
So the ones that have been almost kind of adhering to club licensing or practicing uh, some of the things within club licensing,
mm.
they're the ones who are going to benefit the most because they'll be ready. They'll be the ones who kind of, when things kind of get back to reality, they'll be in a position to say, you know what, we, because of club licensing, from an infrastructure point of view, from a financial, legal, administration point of view, we have the relevant
Mm,
framework structure in place to kind of manage. And of course, finances are a big deal
mm.
with regards to football. You see a lot of solidarity payments that are happening right now. And obviously, from a league perspective, sponsors, broadcasters that have been pumping a lot of money into it are
Yeah.
now, not getting the value that obviously they paid for.
Right.
So it's a very tricky situation right now for leagues, for broadcasters, for sponsors. You're going to get a lot of legal ramifications out of this,
Yeah.
and I think it's where now those stakeholders need to sit together and say, you know what, it's not like we're trying to jip you from your money, but
Mm,
we're all in this together. Let's work out a solution that can benefit everyone in the future. Whether it be like, okay, we'll hold off for increases for the next round of rights or
mm,
something. But at the end of the day, let's work together for a solution because we need sponsors, we need broadcasters in football because they are the ones who kind of make the financial engine tick
mm.
from regards to income streams. So we need them in the mix. So they need to come on board and make sure that they also assist the leagues and clubs because
Right.
at the end of the day, calendars are just a mess right now from a sporting point of view.
Yeah.
And one thing, then you're trying to finish this league, but then get ready for the next league. What happens? So things are going to be
Tricky.
disrupted for
Yeah.
the next year or two where we can maybe then get back to normality with the usual flow. But for the next year or two, things are going to be out of joint. But I think that's where, if you had a solid structure, foundation,
Mm,
and proper cooperation with all stakeholders, that things you can come up with manageable solutions that can say, okay, you know what, we can overcome this
mm,
based on 1, 2, 3. But if we're not at the same table, or we can't even sit at the same table, it's going to take where the league wants to come back at level 3, but Safa wants to come back at level 1
mm.
already. There then we're already disjointed in terms of our approach to football. So hopefully the discussions that have been happening recently between the Joint Liaison Committee have been fruitful, where we can come to a unified kind of solution for football in this country. But at the end of the day, we need to ensure that number one priority is the safety of players, of
Right.
personnel who are involved in any of the games before we get back. But I think now, if you look at the trend across the world, leagues are now discussing, and in all sporting codes are now discussing the resumption of leagues and how they can get back into the mix. I mean, I know some leagues have obviously uh, become null and void,
Yeah.
that decision, that route. So I think it's for us to find a direction that we want to take. and a unified direction, sure that all stakeholders are involved in the process, in the discussion, so we don't leave anyone out. And out of COVID-19, you come out with someone who is bitter for this happening,
Yeah.
and we can't become better in terms of football out of this.
Well, it would be nice you speak of these stakeholders. I don't see it happening, but it would be nice if one of them kind of hung the specter of, not participating over the league in terms of get your house in order. We will comply, get people to comply to club licensing. Let's make this the best product on the continent in all respects, and then we'll play ball. It would be nice to have someone kind of put the league in that position to say, listen, we'll come on board and we'll help out, but you need to meet us halfway and get this league to being the best it could be. You're right. You say we have a good product. I think we just need to tighten things up a bit. But before I let you go, I need to ask you, in terms of some of the suggestions that are being bandied about as to how to resume. You've been to stadiums, you've worked with CAF, in terms of how close we are to being a Bundesliga in terms of enforcing and carrying out. What do you think is the best solution out of the ones that are being mentioned, out of the ones that you've seen around the world, in terms of how to finish up the season? Because it seems that that's very high on the priorities from a business perspective, as you said, to kind of give the ROI to those who've invested so far into the local league.
I think before I answer that question, just to go back to what you were saying before, I think club licensing, as much as we push it towards the professional league, I think it's very key that club licensing starts at the lower leagues, because once it starts at the lower level, by the time they get to the PSL, they understand exactly what's going on. Then you have proper administration of clubs at the lower level. So we can't expect a top-down approach. It must be bottom-up.
Okay.
The majority of clubs on the ground are running a particular way and in a proper way, whereas they're developing players as well. They're doing all that they need to do so that by the time you get to the top, the best of the best are already on another level. So
is that practical here, though, considering we have a very much a thing of the haves and the have-nots? Is it practical for the bottom up? You're right, it makes the most sense, but is it feasible? We're in a league where everyone looks to the Premier League as kind of the reference point. What is the likelihood of that bottom up approach working?
I think anything's feasible. If you put your mind to it, anything's possible.
And there's the will.
Exactly, there's a will. I think from a bottom approach, bottom up approach, you just need to scale it down. You can always scale things down. So obviously the regulations won't be stringent at the bottom, but once you start getting clubs used to a process, and I was very much involved in the mindset of how clubs, from a compliance manual, when we started introducing it, you could see at the beginning clubs were very much anti. Why are we that? But once they started to understand the value, it almost becomes second nature, because it's like something that you do all the time and the value. So if we now start talking to clubs at the bottom level and saying, clubs at the LFA, this is what we need to do, this is what we need, this is how we want clubs to be administered, and you just said slow, obtainable regulations that they can say, okay, then the next season you up it up another notch and up and up. Clubs can start saying, okay, we see the value in this, and now that starts adding to your football in terms of more professional clubs, more professional administrators, better quality coaches, better quality talent that is produced, that is seen. Because at the end of the day, club owners are in this, and a lot of them on the ground are spending a lot of their own hard-earned money in football because they love the game, they're passionate about the game, but they don't see any of the returns. Some clubs will never reach PSL status, but this guy who owns a club in a very rural place, he just loves it because it gives boys, girls an avenue to play football, and that's what he wants. Guys off the street. But it must also be done in a structured way, to where there's rules now in place from a FIFA level where if you develop a player, whether he moves 20 different clubs, you are due a percentage of those transfer fees because you develop. So now it can give club owners that sense that if we're structured and we develop the right players, we can at least start making money from the players that we let go. You
Right.
know,
And still stay in this league, and it's okay.
this league, and that's what we are. We know our
Yeah.
place. Our
Yeah.
place is we develop players for these clubs. It's fine, but we
Right.
make money from when he keeps moving. So there's a place for everyone to play in the
Mm.
PSL, and I think for us, a lot of club owners, because of the system of the structure, has always been, I need to get to the PSL because that's where I can make money. And you
Right.
want to bypass everything, and you want to make sure that you step on other people and just so you can get to the top, because that's where
Yeah.
you only see the value.
Yeah.
Whereas if you start seeing that you are adding value in this ecosystem, you don't
Mm-hmm.
need to necessarily be in the PSL to add value, but you
Mm.
can add value here, and this is what you're doing. Then everybody can now say, okay, no, then I don't have to. Yes, you may have aspirations to be in the Premier League for
Which is
sure,
fine. Yeah.
but in the right way so that when you get there,
Mm.
your club is solid from all aspects of football. And it's not like, oh, as soon as you make it to the PSL, you drop down again because it was too much for you. You couldn't
Yeah.
come, you know,
And if you do
it
drop
was,
down, let it be by the nature of football. Let it be
exactly,
because there are winners and there's losers, not be anything else kind of related to
exactly,
that. Okay, no, you make a very
exactly.
good point, and a good case for it starting from the bottom, moving up. To my point, then,
So
how can we do
back
it,
to you.
Cha? Yeah.
I think there's several ways that have been bandied about.
Mm.
I think I think like government, this is something that nobody's used to. So there's
Yeah.
no precedent. There's
Yes.
nothing that's there this has happened before. So everything that's been currently been done now is new. This
Mm.
is the new precedent that's going
Mm.
for the future.
Right.
So I think all we can do is take from what's happening overseas, but also we must be mindful of the fact that yes, what's happening overseas might not be our reality as well.
Mm.
So in a way, I think for us, obviously looking at the current situation where teams are or nobody's allowed to travel,
Yeah.
it lends then yourself to say maybe we need to look at a tournament style kind of situation where everyone is in one camp
Mm.
quarantined,
Mm.
play their matches in that kind of situation because
Mm.
we are not allowed to travel. I
Mm.
know in other countries, I mean, I was talking to Senzo in Tanzania. I was
Mm.
talking to him yesterday, and he's telling me that their league is kicking off in June, mid-June,
Mm.
and there haven't been travel restrictions with them. So I think obviously the countries is a different reality, but in
Right.
terms of our reality currently right now, I think what we need to look at more is more maybe a tournament style where everybody is in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, I've heard Sun City being bandied about,
Mm.
maybe Gauteng as well, because that's where majority of maybe hotels and more pitches can
Right.
be able to play behind closed doors. So I think the main prerogative or objective is to make sure that the league finishes.
Yeah.
Um, so that at least we can start off. So finishing within the shortest space of time and with the most minimal risk. And
Mm.
that's the key thing because obviously you can't put a price on someone's health. So with the most minimal risk. So I think that would be the best option now if we were
Mm.
to quickly go and finish a league is to have a tournament style where everybody's in one place. We try to get as many games, whether it's 2 to 3 matches per week. It's going to be difficult because obviously then we need to look at uh, the resumption of trainings, the
Right.
resumption of all those things, and when it does happen, whoever does win the league, that there'll be voices from other people saying
Mm.
because of COVID-19, wow, wow, wow,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so in a way, this league is always going to have an asterisk on it
Yes.
from depending on who you support. So it's a challenging time for everyone, but I think with the resumption of other leagues, I think people now in this country specifically are yearning for
Mm.
football to come back into the mix. And I think with government now saying, opening the doors for churches, I
Mm.
think that gives sports also a leg to stand on
Mm.
in terms of maybe
The
reopening.
numbers, exactly, saying that,
Yeah,
if we're playing without a crowd, we can do with
exactly.
50 people. We can do it with 50 people. Okay. Before I let you go, and I'm sure someone will be watching this and maybe reach out to you after for your services, but if you were kind of speaking to a club and saying strategy coming out of COVID-19, learning from the handbook that governs club licensing in terms of things to kind of focus on, in terms of, just kind of honing in on these two or three topics and strategies to help you kind of, come out of COVID looking better? If you were liaising with someone and saying, listen, focus on this and that, what would be some of the touch points for you for a club looking to get itself in line with club licensing in a way that's going to help it recover and build from COVID-19?
I think what we've seen from the impact of, I think, this pandemic is,
Mm,
number one, I think football is about people.
mm,
That's first and foremost. So I think for a club, clubs need to reassess, the kind of personnel
yeah,
um, that they have within the organization and what value they can add to the organization.
sure.
I think that's very key, because we can talk about all these other things, but it's people who drive those things. And
Yes.
if you don't have the right people, then you're not going to achieve those objectives, because then the people you have are not going to get you there. So I
Mm,
think this is a time for us to say, okay, let's look holistically within our ranks and see who do we have, or who can we now come in. Um, a lot of the time, I think clubs shy away from investing in youth from an
mm,
administration point of view.
mm,
We always talk about youth in football. Yeah, it's, young players, more value, but we don't do it at
mm,
administration level.
mm,
Whereas at administration, we almost think the older you are, the better value you add.
right.
Where I think current times,
No,
the younger guys are the guys with the solutions that you
exactly.
need as
Exactly.
a football club, as a sporting organization.
Yeah.
So those are the guys. Those are the guys who are going to come up with solutions that you are going to
For a
now start
modern
monetizing.
club. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think the main thing for me is to look into your administration and start investing in youth on and
Mm,
off the field.
mm,
Because um, if you're now investing in youth, let's say on the field, you're
mm,
investing in youth, you're developing players, but then you don't play the player. What's the point of,
mm.
making sure that you produce all these players if you're
Right.
not investing in them
Exactly.
yourself, if you're
Exactly.
not playing them yourself. So
Exactly.
I think it's the same off the field as well. Invest in talent, and there's so many young. I receive CVs almost on a regular basis
I can
of
imagine.
kids who want an opportunity. And these kids, they're not expensive, they're coming out of varsity, they want an opportunity, they're eager to learn.
Mm,
So those are the kind of people that you should look at putting into your organization,
mm,
making sure that they're going to be the ones driving or giving you solutions to how you can get out of this pandemic, how you can grow as in terms of a business. So administration, to me, number one, people. Let me just not even say administration, people. Investing in young people, I
yeah.
think, is a key that organizations need to look at.
Okay, there we go. I mean, that's great. We've touched on everything. Thank you so much. It's been illuminating once again. It feels like it's the first time we've kind of spoken about club licensing. If I remember the last time, it was just I had many aha moments in that discussion as well, and so too today is the case. Thank you so much, Gabelo. We really appreciate your time and yeah, your transparency and your clarity at illuminating what is a tricky subject. I think people still, probably walk away from this needing to Google and read the manual and find out more. But I think we've kind of condensed the tenets of club licensing into this discussion. And I thank you for that.
No, definitely. And it was a pleasure being on your platform. And you guys are doing a great job in terms of keeping all of us at home informed in terms of what's going on around the country, around the continent, around the world in terms of sports. And, we applaud you guys, and keep doing what you're doing and keep growing to bigger heights, because, I've been very much following your guys' growth, and I think there's big things to come. And especially with this pandemic, I think
Mm,
it's opened up opportunities in the space for you guys, and for me, I always see challenges as opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities that have come out of this pandemic, and the way that it's kind of almost like kind of reset, rewired
yeah,
people in terms of how they do things,
yeah,
and now it's for us to now kind of be the leaders in terms of how people are going to now do the new the
Yeah.
new kind of process, new resetting. So the way people consume sports, the way people engage about sports, the way people administer sports, the way, so everything has just been done on a different level. So I think it's the onus is on us now to almost kind of say, let's engineer what we want to see in the future, and let's push those platforms, those models out there, so that we can get people to enjoying things and
Yeah.
consuming things how they should be, you know?
Right, right. No, thank you very much. Appreciate your kind words. And yeah, we're definitely trying to make sure that we are on the curve along with everybody else, as far as, keeping up with how sports broadcasting will be after COVID-19. So thank you so much for that. And we appreciate it. Have a great week. Hope we come out of it stronger with more opportunities to do what you do best. And we'll touch base again soon.
No, thanks a lot. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.